This is a Naked Conch production brought to you by Live Bait Lounge in beautiful Key West Harbor, located at Key West Bait and Tackle, where you can get all your fishing supplies when in Key West. And Catch the Mania pub-style trivia. Make your bar or restaurant an exciting venue with Catch the Mania.
Thank you. My name is Mark Cole, for those of you who don't know me. I graduated from the Citadel in 1977, and after I graduated, I went to work at the State Attorney's Office up in West Palm Beach. I started off in the mailroom and worked my way up to the assistant to the office manager up there. During the process of my time at the State Attorney's Office in West Palm Beach, I worked as a paralegal, I worked as their information technology person. I was the computer guy for them. While I was working there, I went to law school. I came back to the State Attorney's Office in West Palm Beach, worked for him for a couple more years as an assistant state attorney, handling cases in the juvenile division, moved up to felony, did misdemeanors, moved up to felonies, and in 1987 I came down here to the Keys. I worked in the Key West State Attorney's Office from 1987 until 1989. In 1989 they moved me to the Upper Keys where I ran the office, and I stayed there until 1995 when I had a little falling out with the then state attorney. I then went into private practice for about 5 years, and my falling out was so bad with the prior state attorney that I actually ran against him, and I became the elected state attorney here in Monroe County. And in 2000 I took over. I did 8 years as a state attorney. 3.5 years ago I lost the election, unfortunately, and as a result I went back into private practice. I'm now seeking to go back to my old office, and I'm hoping that I can count on your support. And when this thing's over and done with, if anybody wants to ask me any questions that we don't answer during the course of the forum here, I'll be happy to stick around and talk to anybody that's interested in talking to me. Thank you.
Catherine Vogel.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Vogel, and of course I'm running as a Democrat for state attorney. Some of you might have heard about me. I started my professional life. I went to the University of Florida undergraduate school. I received a degree in psychology back in 1974. Then I was a social worker for a while. After that, I decided to go to law school. Went to the law school at the University of Miami and graduated with honors in 1981. After that, I was hired to work as an assistant state attorney under Janet Reno. That was in Miami, Florida. I worked in Miami, Florida under Janet Reno and then Catherine Fernandez-Rundle until the year of 2001. During the time when I was working at the state attorney's office in Miami, I tried many cases and had been promoted to what was called the Major Crimes Unit, which basically I was prosecuting high-level, complex cases, mostly involving homicide cases. I prosecuted some famous cases when I was in Miami. One of them was the Jimmy Rice case that some of you may know about. It was a young boy who went missing in Southgate, Florida. In the year 2001, through mutual friends, I was introduced to my opponent, Mr. Cole, who was looking for someone to be his chief assistant. I moved to Key West, and my life just improved enormously, leaving Dade County and moving to Monroe County. I love it here. And I started working as a chief assistant under Mark Cole. Worked here for 8 years in Key West, Florida as chief assistant. When Mr. Ward took over as state attorney, I chose to leave at that point and open my own practice. I was in private practice for approximately 2 years, and then I became a supervising attorney for Department of Children and Families until I decided to run for state attorney, and that's what I'm doing now. Semi-retired, I'm a candidate. Thank you so
Now
much.
we're down to the final 2 candidates for your office. Please explain why you feel you are more qualified for the position, or why we should vote for you instead of your opponent.
Thank you. Well, as many of you know, I worked under Mr. Cole, and I have a great deal of respect for him. When you hear about our qualifications, they're pretty much equal. But what I believe is different is I bring a fresh approach to the job. I have not been state attorney. I have been out canvassing the area during the primary. I have been talking to individuals and people in the community, and I know what it is that they want. I have heard over and over that what they do want is a state attorney that's going to treat people fairly. They want somebody who is going to go after the public corruption that's in the community, but they want it done in a fair way. I'm prepared to do that. I am prepared to go to court and to try these cases and to do it in a fair and even way. I'm also very prepared to go and meet individuals and meet people. I have an outgoing personality. I think that I am very good talking to the community, listening to what it is that they like, what it is that they want, and what it is that they want to see happen in the state attorney's office. I also believe that I have a unique ability to relate to the employees. As I said before, I have a great deal of respect for my opponent, but I think that it's my turn.
Same question, Mark Holt.
Thank you very much. If you think I'm going to say anything bad about Catherine, you're wrong. There's a reason that I let her run my office for 8 years, and that is because she was extraordinarily competent. Also, she and I think pretty much alike. That's one of the reasons that we got along so well. What I will tell you is that I'm very, very active in the community. I just finished up a year as the president of the Upper Keys Rotary Club. I'm a member of the Alamorada Chamber. I was on the Alamorada Chamber Board of Directors for a while. I'm a member of the Key Largo Chamber. When I was the state attorney, I was a member of the Key West Chamber. I was a member of the Big Pine, what they call it, Lower Keys Chamber. I was a member of the Marathon Chamber. I was active in all the Rotary clubs throughout the county. I traveled to them and met with people. I'm extremely involved in the community, and I hope to be extremely involved again. Right now, as a result of my business being in the Upper Keys, I don't come down that often. That's one of the reasons that you haven't seen me that much recently. As far as one of the differences between the two of us, one of the things that I have going for me are my contacts on a statewide basis. As the state attorney for 8 years, your state attorney for 8 years, I made a number of connections that are helpful to an individual that is in the position of state attorney. I was the secretary of the Florida Prosecuting Attorneys Association. I would have been the president had I not lost the election bid. I was appointed by the governor to the Medical Examiners Commission. I was appointed by the 20 state attorneys to represent them on what we call the CJIS Committee, the Criminal Justice and Juvenile Information Systems, that set policy throughout the state of Florida for law enforcement use of technology.
I think that's it.
Oh, I didn't see one that said quit.
You do not want to be involved in this interpretive dance process. The National District Attorneys Association states that a prosecutor's individual rate of conviction or any prosecutor's office rate of conviction should not be considered in the charging or sentencing decision. Do you agree with this? Is this or should this be the policy of our state attorney's office?
Yes, I do agree with that. One of the things that happens when you prosecute a case is you can't predict what is going to be the final outcome when you have a jury. I wish we could, as a matter of fact, if I could predict what was going to happen with the jury, I'd be making a fortune right now. You can't hold it against the prosecutor because they lose a case. Additionally, you may have what could be the best case in the world from the standpoint of the evidence that you would normally have in the case. But what happens if the witness happens to be somebody that's a bad person, somebody that's not credible, as let's say a hit in a mob situation? If the witness is going to come and testify as somebody that's worked as a hitman for the mob before, and that person is going to be testifying against the person that pulled the trigger, what kind of a witness is that? Now, the fact is that the evidence is still there to convict the individual. However, the conviction is not going to be a lock because the witnesses are not going to be credible witnesses. Oftentimes, prosecutors will cut deals in those situations because they know the risk of that they're running if they go to a trial. You really can't hold a prosecutor's conviction rate out as an indication as to how good or how bad they're doing. Sometimes cases need to be prosecuted even though the evidence is poor. It's not a good thing to do, but it's something that is taken into consideration when we cut deals with individuals and or when we make decisions to prosecute or not prosecute. And I agree with the National District Attorneys Association completely on that.
Same question, Catherine.
I as well completely agree with the National District Attorneys Association on this item. One of the things that we have to do as prosecutors is we're not looking for a conviction rate, or we shouldn't be looking for a conviction rate. What we should be looking is for justice. When a jury finds a defendant not guilty, that is justice. It may not be the outcome that you wanted, but it certainly is. In the United States, we're all entitled to a jury trial. We're entitled to presumption of innocence, and everyone is presumed innocent until they're convicted. A prosecutor's work should be judged upon their integrity, the amount of time and effort that they take into applying the law effectively. Just because a prosecutor's office does not convict every single case, that really, they actually probably shouldn't be convicting every case. Because a lot of times, they can't prove the case, then the jury should find somebody not guilty. It shouldn't be held against the prosecutor. So I agree 100%.
Will be for the two candidates running for state attorney, and Catherine, we'll begin with you. What is your position on Florida's stand your ground law? And considering the legislative movement to rethink the law, would you support its repeal, amending it, or keeping it just like it is?
Thank you for that question. I have some pretty strong feelings. I have to tell you that I, as a prosecutor, worked before the stand your ground law. I think that the stand your ground law is not a good law. I believe that it should be repealed. I know that the way that the law was the way that the law stood prior to the statute's enactment was that as you could use self-defense, but you had a duty to retreat if it was possible. What the law was did not require you to retreat unless it was safe for you to retreat. So basically what it did was, I believe that it was safer because it encouraged people to remove themselves from the danger before using deadly force. I believe that as a responsible human being, that is the best way for you to behave. If you are confronted with a gun or something that makes it possible for you to retreat, or if retreating it endangered yourself or another person, you were privileged with using deadly force. So I think it took care of all the scenarios. I would support the entire repeal of the stand your ground law. I do think it's a bad law.
Mark, same question.
Thank you. I would agree with Catherine. When I was state attorney, that law was passed. I was in Tallahassee along with a number of other state attorneys, and we lobbied against the stand your ground law as it was set, as it was proposed in the state legislature. We were the only law enforcement group that was against it. The police chiefs, the Sheriff's Association, the NRA, they were all out there lobbying in behalf of that. We believed that it was a poorly written law, and what it was going to do, it was going to create a situation that would create a defense for an individual that probably didn't deserve it. And you're going to find that there are two things which protect individuals already that are sufficient. Number one is the fact that there is a law called self-defense. And if you are in a situation where you feel threatened, you're allowed to defend yourself, and you're allowed to use deadly force if it's deadly force is being used against you. And Catherine went into some instances of that kind of stuff. The other thing that protects you is there's prosecutorial discretion. If you have prosecutors, state attorneys and assistant state attorneys, that are exercising proper prosecutorial discretion, we can take a look at a case and make a determination that it's just fundamentally unfair to prosecute this individual under the circumstances. And we can make a decision not to do that prosecution, even though the law may not be perfectly in line for the situation. It's important to have good prosecutors with common sense and with good supervisors in the position to make those decisions. And I agree with Catherine that it's a poorly written law and probably should be removed from the books.
The questions are so good, I'm going to use a little moderator liberty here and do a compound question for the state attorneys and put two questions together. Part A of this question, what is your conviction rate? And part B, tell us something we'd be surprised to learn about. And Mark, we'll start with you.
As far as my conviction rate is concerned, I will tell you that I do not know. I do have a recollection when I went to the Upper Keys in 1989. I had a very good string of luck up there. I tried, I don't know how many cases my first year, probably about 30. I remember I lost my very first case up there, and I went approximately 1 year with guilty as charged on every case after that for an entire year. Unfortunately, I got a little bit cocky after that and filed a couple cases I probably shouldn't have, and lost a couple, and that brought some humility back to me. As far as something surprising about me, that I'm really an open book. There's not that much that's a surprise about me. I'm a computer nerd. I guess that's about all I can say. And I enjoy using the technology or the information that I know as a result of being a computer nerd to help improve the quality of prosecutions and to make it easier on prosecutors to do their work. I thought that was something that I was very good at when I was the state attorney, and for that matter, when I was an assistant state attorney. So, thank you.
Catherine, same question. What's your conviction rate? And tell us something we would be surprised to learn about you.
Okay, I also don't know what my conviction rate is. I can tell you that as a prosecutor, it's been a long time since I've lost a case. We're talking double-digit years, maybe 15. Well, if you go back to 4 years ago and you go back about 15 years, I don't think I ever lost. I think it was like maybe 15 years was the last time I lost a case. But I understand that I was not prosecuting a lot of cases then. I was always prosecuting high-profile homicide cases, and they were cases that were very well. We'd done a lot of research on them and a lot of investigations. So they were sort of cherry-picked cases, so that's almost unfair. But I hadn't lost it maybe over 15 years. And as a defense attorney, I've won 2 and lost 2. What would you be surprised to know about me? About 2 years ago, I finished the Goofy, which is on a Saturday, I did a half marathon. The next day, I did a full marathon in Disney World. So when you look at me now, you think, how could that woman have actually done those miles? Well, I guarantee you, a couple of years ago, I was in that kind of shape. I'm looking to get back into shape.
Put a compound question together. Catherine, you'll answer it first. Mark, and then you. Part 1 of the question is, what are your views on Florida's current gun laws? And 2, how do you believe the media affects criminal cases in Monroe County?
Okay. As your prosecutor, I'm tasked with supporting the laws as they are, with the exception, of course, of the Stand Your Ground law. I am willing and ready to, well, I mean, I would apply that law as well, but the state of the Florida gun laws, I don't have any objection to any of them. Maybe if there was something specific you could ask me about, but there's nothing that stands out as an objection for me. And the other question was...
How do you believe the media affects court cases in Monroe County?
Okay, I ran on one of my platforms was to follow the National District Attorneys Association mandate for prosecutors not to comment in the press. Continued comments by your prosecutor can jeopardize a fair and impartial jury to sit in cases. And I do believe that in Monroe County, we have for the past 4 years had a prosecutor's office which disclosed information which could have impacted some of the juries. And the problem is it doesn't jeopardize a case for the prosecution. It makes it easier for the prosecution to get a guilty verdict. And that's not what our Constitution contemplated when they wrote the law. So, as your state attorney, I'm going to be following the National District Attorneys Association and the rules of ethics, and we're not going to comment on open petty cases. Thank you.
Okay, and same questions. Mark Cole will repeat the questions. What are your views on Florida's gun laws, and how should the state attorney's office interact with the media? How does the media affect criminal cases?
Okay, as far as the gun laws are concerned, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I have a stepfather who would shoot me if I didn't say something like that. He's one of those gun fanatics that probably has around 70 or 80 guns. I personally only have one myself, and to be honest with you, I don't even know where the bullets are. However, I am a strong supporter of the way the law is written right now, and I will support the Constitution and defend it just like I would be sworn, like I have been sworn to in the past, and that's what I would intend to do in the future. As far as the question about the media is concerned, one of the things that has disappointed me about the media is that they have a tendency to over-sensationalize some things, and they also misinterpret quite a bit of information. And while it's a great thing for them to get better information, I believe that they should get that on their own. When I was the state attorney and an assistant state attorney, I was very unhappy with the way that the media went about reporting things. Instead of going out and reading the court file on their own, they would call people up and say, what is it that you think? And then they'd repeat what it is we said. The court file has a lot of information, and it's all public record. And if the media would do their job and go out and read the court file, they would gather a ton of information that they could utilize in forming their articles. And I wish they would have done that, when I was the state attorney. Unfortunately, we are in a situation where we had to educate them quite often, but we did not educate them about the facts. We stuck to the National District Attorney's guidelines on dealing with the press, and that's what I would do in the future. I just would hope that the media would do a better job in the future.
All right, I want to thank the Lodging Association for submitting some fantastic questions. And now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to give each candidate an opportunity to ask one question to his or her opponent. You have an opportunity to ask Catherine Vogel a question, and then Catherine has an opportunity to ask you one question.
I've been sitting here wondering about that. This is really, really difficult because there's nothing that I can think of that I would really like to ask her. Only two questions came to mind. Number one is, when was the last time she was on Loop Road? Anybody here know where Loop Road is? For what it's worth, I've only been there once. The only real question I can think of is whether or not she would hire Dennis Ward back as an assistant state attorney.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe it would be worth it just so that I could get rid of him again. I'm sorry to anybody who supported him. That's a cheap shot. I apologize. No, I don't think I would hire Mr. Ward. So, and I haven't been to Loop Road. I can't think that I've never been there.
And you have a question for Mark?
Sure. All right, for Mr. Ward, for Mr. Cole, what were your best moments and your worst moment being state attorney?
My best moment was watching an individual being taken off to prison for the rest of his life that I had just finished prosecuting for his third sexual battery. Each one of his sexual batteries had involved a use of force. The one that I prosecuted him on, he used a stun gun on the poor victim. When that man went off to prison for the rest of his life, that was probably my best moment as a prosecutor. My worst moment was when I lost a case with a young victim where the only evidence was basically the witness's testimony, and the victim was around, I think, 5 years old when it happened, and the court basically made a determination that the victim was not a credible witness, that she had been led into making the statements that she had made by the police officers and the parents that were involved in the investigation. It basically was a lewd. It was a touching where somebody reached out and grabbed hold of her and fondled her, and the court just did not believe her statement and believed that it was brought on by suggestion from the witnesses and the investigators involved in the case. Having lost that case, that was probably my worst. But there are a number of wins out there that I had that made me feel real proud, and that one sexual battery with the stun gun was one.
Before we give each candidate an opportunity to give a closing.
Thank you. I want to thank you all again for coming out. Many of you that I know, and I've been very lucky to meet some new people here this afternoon. As your state attorney, I look forward to bringing professionalism back to the office. I look forward to not promoting the office just merely for politics. I look forward to being your state attorney, prosecuting cases in the courtroom, not in the press. I look forward to being accessible to the community, to bringing better morale to the office of the state attorney so that we can keep very good prosecutors on board and working for you. And I'm committed to do that. My professional career almost entirely has been dedicated to being a prosecutor, and for the past 11 years, I've been dedicated to Monroe County. Please, November 6th, vote for me, Catherine Vogel, for your state attorney. Thank you.
Mark, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming today. I'd like to tell you that many years ago I made a decision to become a career prosecutor, and I'd like to continue on with that decision. I'd like to continue to be a career prosecutor. I feel that the position of state attorney is in a unique position to become involved in the community, and that's something that I've done in the past. As I look around the room, I recognize a lot of you. I haven't been around for the last couple of years. That's because I live in the Upper Keys, and that's where my business is. I'd like a chance to come back down here and get more involved in your situation. As I told you before, I was a member of every one of the chambers of commerce here in Monroe County when I was the state attorney. I'm a member of Rotary, past president. I'm on the board of directors of Leadership Monroe. I would like a chance to come back down here and get more involved in your community, because I do get involved in any community that I work in. And I'd like a chance to come down here to Key West and become involved in your community just like I have in the past. Thank you. Keep me in mind.
Thank you all very much for your civic involvement. Thank you, Derek.
This is a Naked Conch production brought to you by Live Bait Lounge in beautiful Key West Harbor, located at Key West Bait and Tackle, where you can get all your fishing supplies when in Key West. And Catch the Mania pub-style trivia. Make your bar or restaurant an exciting venue with Catch the Mania.